Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another test stream on this Sunday of December 14th for video game news. Trying to figure out how this whole vertical live streaming is supposed to go. Inherently, the first test stream crashed as I tried to zoom up a image to 300 times in Firefox. My entire computer locked up. I would think that that is probably a Firefox, no, not Firefox, a NVIDIA graphics card issue. So I'm not sure if after processing that stream that the vertical live stream is going to be something you can ever find. And frankly, I'm not sure you're ever going to be able to find the vertical live stream at all, because to me, it seems like what it's doing is it's putting it in the YouTube Shorts, and the whole YouTube Shorts feed is designed to be an Instagram-like feed that would absolutely be focused on the aspect of having an ephemeral, for lack of a better term, form to it. So yeah, I'm gonna launch the official YouTube app and see if I can find it in Shorts at all. Yeah, because like when I click the Shorts button on the official app, you only see it by the form factor of, well, when you click the Shorts button, you only see just random videos being applied to you, and yeah, that doesn't work well, because I would just have to like swipe up for hours upon hours and still probably never be recommended my own video. Let's see. And as far as I can tell, there is just no way to get the vertical form in full screen mode if you start with the horizontal form. And as far as I can tell, I don't think that there's a great way to get any recommendation feed the streams either. Yeah. So I just don't think this feature is going to work for me, which apparently my computer is not capable of handling it. In this test stream, we're back to the way I was streaming things before. No longer am I trying to split the image between two monitors and then shrink two 1080p images down to be half their size, and thus making them fairly unreadable to make it then fit in some kind of portrait view. Yeah. And as far as I can tell, the automatic vertical live stream is not really capturing the image well, because right now I'm looking on the other page. The vertical live stream seems to just be capturing the, can't even, I've changed the settings, the left half of this angel girl. Yeah. And angel devil character. If I click full screen on the vertical live screen, it just takes me to full screen of the whole image. So yeah, I don't think anything here is working well. And apparently my bitrate is also too low, which is interesting in itself. Current bitrate, it says, is 703 kilobits. It's lower than the recommended bitrate. We recommend you use a bitrate of 6,800 kilobits per second. Boy, is that a completely different setting. It would certainly explain some of the ugliness. I can also say the vertical live stream aspects are pretty slow. So it is just like trying to auto detect where to put the image, and seems to do it at any point when the screen changes. And I have my stream on a 30-second delay too, so yeah, can we change settings while streaming? Let's see. Output. Stream. Output. Streaming. Bitrate. Wow. Well, that's something to consider. Too, has my bitrate been crappy this whole time? Boy, would that be amazing if just turning up the bitrate solved a bunch of problems and made my channel just better accepted and watched more. Let's see, let's double check the audio. Everything messed up when I reset my computer. It's not uncommon for that to happen. But yeah, we were in the middle of looking at this page in particular, and we ran into a crash with this as far as looking at how this fits. I feel like, I know we're jumping around back and forth between Yu-Gi-Oh! And the web page. But yeah, looking at this, it feels to me like I would have to effectively shrink it down. Right. This would be 67%. It was at 110% before. Let's see if that's what happens. Yeah. Now, and I don't have too much to say as I wait 30 seconds for this to happen. I'm watching the stream from the YouTube Studios point because that's the only place I can even see what the image looks like as far as the vertical live stream. So left to its own devices, the vertical live stream is going to suck for what I'm doing. It just absolutely is. It's something I probably would enable anyways, just to get some cheap views, because being in the shorts feed, I imagine you get a view counted if you are watching more than 5 seconds of it. Of course, watch time there is not going to be great. And yeah, just now I am 30 seconds behind, so just now I can see what it would look like at 67%, and it's still not really squeezing enough of it in. And I feel like you go much smaller on this. This is now 50%, and that's not readable. Like, even with my glasses, that is not readable to me from looking at a TV 8 feet away at about a 30-degree angle upward. So, yeah. And that leaves just a massive amount of negative space all throughout the edges. Enough that you could easily squeeze nearly 2 other pages on the left side and the right side of the screen. Which, yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. Yeah. Inherently, it would make more sense to have 2 separate streams, because that's the reality of it, is that we really need 2 completely separate streams going with just about the same amount of data, or a new standard where you could stream 1 stream and then point out where you want it to center and focus on, which, yeah, I definitely am not really getting that. The text crawl at the top looks fine during the live streams, though. We'll say that much. But yeah, even at 50%, I mean, you're going down to 30% as far as the next resolution. And this is also pushing the limits of what is reasonable to expect a web browser to be able to squish a web page to. Many web pages are going to fail at that level of resolution. And yeah, this is definitely not readable at this point. So, yeah, that is not really the solution. Have to squeeze in things. Yeah, 1920 being the length of pixels theoretically on a TV on a horizontal stream would then have to be squeezed down to 1080, which means less than half of its size. Yeah, only at 30% now does this page fully fit in the vertical live stream, but it's certainly not readable at that point. Yeah. It would make just as much sense to do this and service an audience that could actually read the text. So yeah, I don't know how you fix this either. It seems to me like the image really just defaults to the center by default. And so how do I split a stream so that the 1080 pixels in the middle here are showing the most important things, and the sides are just adding extra visual flavor and fluff? I mean, how do you do that? You basically would have to make a 3-column web design, and if you do make a 3-column web design, you'd have to put almost a texture only look to it. This could, if this became super popular, not that I expect it would become super popular, become a revolutionary new way of designing web pages, and that you just have all of the pretty pictures in the middle. Like, theoretically, if I could get the Master Jewel and the Belartro and the Time Clickers and Gabriel Knight image in the middle, that would be cool. How would I do that though? You'd almost have to have all the web page start in the middle on the left side and just add something special over here on the right side, and then hope that, generically speaking, all the important information is on the left side, which in English language websites, yeah, it does tend to be left justified and left focused as far as what you would see. So yeah, I could think of something there to do that, but I don't know what that something would be. It's going to be a lot of tweaking to make that happen. I had an extension, let's see, I think I disabled it. Let's see, yeah, I'm trying to center pages. Well, enable that extension, and then let's go here and see what we can do with that. So this kind of breaks things, certainly, but doing this doesn't change the size of things. Let's leave it at that and see what that looks like. Now I'm going to have to wait another 30 seconds though to see how that goes. Yeah, the way you would do this more accurately would be to have a custom CSS for specific pages, which will just be a ton of extra work for me, certainly, but yeah. And the sad thing here is that there really is just so many more people that are likely to count as a view, and there's just an unfairness in how the votes are getting counted effectively, that completely mangling and mutilating your stream to work for a vertical live stream actually does make some sense. Yeah. And that actually works. I have figured out that at this setting, this page will show just the pictures of recently played games and get a little bit, maybe the first couple letters of all the text on the right side here. And so then if there was just something other than negative space over here showing something, that might be doable. Again, though, you're effectively needing to make a 3-column design, and this is a very weird way to make a web page. Maybe an intriguing way on some levels to make a web page, though. And I don't think there's really too much I could change. I could make this a little bit bigger, and maybe it would squeeze in, but I would mostly want to leave it at that. Okay. So the whole point of this live stream is to test and to see how things look in this vertical stream, even though, once again, I literally cannot see it. Like, I literally cannot find the live stream in vertical shorts or in the shorts feed to watch it in that format, where you would think YouTube would just have a different button on the mobile app specifically so you could watch it in vertical, or when you clicked full screen it would give you the opportunity to see it in vertical live streams format. So inherently you're getting a different audience too from these YouTube short views, if you get any of them at all, and that it will just be random people who have no knowledge of your channel or you popping in. So yeah, there's a consideration certainly there that you're potentially kowtowing and changing how you do things to entreat, I suppose, a whole new audience, and an audience that probably doesn't care too much about the content you're making. It almost feels like it might be just wiser to put at the top crawl in the middle there text that says watch this in full screen to see the full image, or check this out in full screen. Now the bitrate issue seems to be completely random. The thing there is that the bitrate shouldn't really have changed at all, since it's all on YouTube server side that they're cropping the image to be vertical. Alright, so then let's see what we could do. Yeah, it's either squeeze everything down on Steam, which noticeably this page has some stretching of the background, so it will always take a certain amount of space, and that just makes it completely unreadable. Or it's have everything at like 100%, and then I guess the question is, can we bring the margins in? And still gonna have to shrink things down quite a bit to do that. Might make sense to just justify things, but I don't know. So again, it would be, for the Steam front page, a hassle, to say the least. More than likely, I'd probably want to fix this not in Firefox for per page, although that would be the better move. It probably would be smarter to fix this directly in the OBS and just squeeze down an image automatically, because that would be more consistent. It would be at least the easiest experimental way to do things. But looking at Steam as it is, it really doesn't seem like there's a great way to get this heavily pictorial content to make sense in a vertical stream. It just doesn't make sense. Yeah. So yeah, I kind of feel like I'm gonna check this sale out from shopping reasons. Yeah, it kind of feels like it would make a lot more sense to still just not care about vertical streaming, which has been my strategy with vertical YouTube shorts in the past too, is heavily automated, don't really care about quality, churn it out as much as quickly as possible, which in fairness is also not too different from my pre-recorded footage either. I definitely am not interested in doing a bunch of editing and all of that. I guess it is probably a good thing that the live streams are not jumping around, because that certainly could get annoying, to say the least. And I could change how things looked based on what web page I'm on through OBS. That's a little bit convoluted of a way of doing things, certainly, but yeah. There is thought there. Lots of House Flipper and similar upcoming games. House Flipper Remastered Collection available in 2026. Interesting. I won't even get around to playing House Flipper 1 before there's some remastered version that they'll want to resell me. Yeah. Actually, let's open that up again and just talk about that for a second. Again, this would be a page that would be very difficult to squeeze in either direction so it would make sense. And see, this is why I thought 2 monitors would really make more sense anyways, is to just have 2 1080p inputs being squeezed down to half their size, which would get us very close to what it should look like. Because these are web pages though, having Firefox adjust the sizing, particularly on Steam with its modal design, does make more sense and will adapt to it, to that concept a lot more. So what would be really crazy to do here is to create a cycle on OBS that would skip from one frame to another frame to another frame. So you have the 3-column design of the page, and then throughout the live stream it would move this column to the center, then show the center column, didn't show the right column. And so it would just be this transition, transition, transition. Or it would just be a scroll across. Which, it's crazy to even try this, and this may crash my computer. But I'm gonna see if I can do this right now. Let's see. Web peak. Display capture. Add a filter. I don't know if we can really do this live. Crop pad. That would be one way to do this. Start with, if we just padded the left side. Need to type bigger numbers than just holding it down and letting it go up by hundreds. I don't know why padding the left side is cropping the left side. Guess need to be typing in negative numbers. There. Negative. There. Left side pad, negative 1080, seems to put the image directly to the right. So yeah, that would be one way to move things around and try something different. That would be a more basic filter, but that wasn't really what I was thinking about doing. I was thinking about scroll. Okay. Loop, scroll, vertical speed, not vertical. And the vertical is not trimming all of the things it should be trimming. We want horizontal. All right. If we bring this up to a speed of like 60 frames per second, that's kind of slow and reasonable. We bring it up to 90 frames. I assume these are 90 frames per second. It's a little too fast. 120 seems to be. Let's bring this down to 60 frames per second. I don't know if you're seeing any of this or not. I don't think you are. Right. So, here's what we could do as far as a stream goes. And I could also pad this so that it wouldn't go away. So let's just look at this for 30 seconds as we look at the Steam Deck refurb as far as this goes. And again, I guess if you were doing a specific stream only for the live stream, vertical live streams, if you were just sending out different images this way, this would be a good way to adjust it. Although it's not a universally good way, I don't think. I doubt YouTube would adapt this as its way of doing things, is to just have a bunch of streaming. There we go. So yeah, finally kicked in. For a second there I thought it wasn't going to kick in. So yeah, I guess you could have pages depict themselves that way, but again, you're just mangling your widescreen presentation to accommodate widescreen in a very bad way anyways. Yeah. It certainly doesn't make the vertical scrolling ticker bars at the top look better when you are scrolling on top of scrolling. But it does keep the Steam Deck text there of reverbs that aren't available readable if you're willing to sit there long enough. What's also crazy about this, and I can't help but wonder, is since YouTube Shorts are limited to 3 minutes at most in time, and still I'm seeing a lot of pretty big content creators not knowing that, and then they end up uploading videos that are slightly over 3 minutes and a second, and then those videos just aren't showing up in this Shorts feed and they're showing up as regular videos. It is weird that a live stream like this is going to be effectively completely different from that, because nobody's going to live stream for just a couple of minutes. But maybe that is really what YouTube is thinking here, and so I don't know if these videos disappear after being streamed always, or if they disappear if they are not under 3 minutes, or if they stop showing and being suggested the second they are over 3 minutes. It is confusing, to say the least, as far as what they would really be going for there. Let's see. Let's go back to Steam and see what the scroll looks like in that case. Just for a second, and then we'll move forward. So yeah, it probably would make more sense to pad than to stream. Pad to the left, so it's in the middle, and then do what? That's the question. What do you do on the left side, and how do you make it really work? If anything, it would kind of make sense to rip the source apart, and that would be something I'd have to be more creative about doing, but I could probably do that, where I ripped the source apart and took the left side of an image and put it on the right, and take the left side of a page, put it on the left column, the right side on the right column, and then the middle is just a squished image of the whole thing, or some cut down version of it. But then you'd also have to squish the left column and the right column. So yeah, none of it is showing any great promise. And obviously this would be way easier if I wasn't showing web pages, or if I was showing web pages with a monitor that was rotated 90 degrees, and so that does bring about an interesting thought that maybe I should just rotate one of my monitors, if not physically, virtually, and just have a monitor that is displaying things at a vertical resolution. That might make the most sense, but still, even if I did do that, how am I doing the mainstream at that point? It still is the left column, center column, and right column issue. That fixes rendering on all the pages better, sure, but it doesn't actually fix the core problem of what would you do in your widescreen view. Right, well, let's move on. So do we want to have this scroll continue for the rest of this? I think not, as we're still experimenting. So let's turn that off. Let's see. Scaling and aspect ratio would be another filter I could potentially go with. Let's see. 16 by 9. Let's see. Let's see if I can just type in 9 by 16. Again, this may crash my screen. Scaling filter by cubic, point bit linear. Should just look awful. Anyway, you place it. If I do that, you can't even see the screen, so it would require moving and transforming things. I think beyond that, then let's see. Not color key. That's an interesting thought. It's going to be crop and pad after that. Yeah. And none of this seems to be working correctly. So yeah, it's not going to work either. So let me think about chroma key for a second here. Would there be a way to overlay an image using chroma key. I mean, that's probably a crazy, complicated, not really necessary way to address things. Because really you would just be overlaying things anyways. Yeah, what's coming to mind as a possibility would be to effectively have a red filter like the old red and blue 3D glasses applied to the screen so that you would see a completely different image in the vertical stream mode compared to what you would see in the widescreen horizontal mode. And that seems like something that would be very complicated to do beyond what I could figure out to straight up overlay two images. It kind of feels like if that was the case, you could potentially just perform magic effectively and have the image in the center look different just because it is at a different resolution. And you might actually have been able to pull that off if the images were getting squished or stretched in any way. But the images aren't getting squished and stretched. So, yeah, I don't think you can really perform any major magic there. In this case, again, it seems like a margin could push something like this to fit somewhat as far as just a left margin on all the pages. Yeah, and if I had any reason to stream my face, which I don't, you could see where one of the three columns might just be a reaction camera or something like that. Yeah, the truth here is that the Streamlabs way of doing it, and I don't use Streamlabs, I use OBS, which doesn't have a built-in way, but does have a plugin I should probably play with, to just have two streams going at once that are completely separate seems to be way better of an option to just have that better control, because the people who are going to be doing that are going to have really nice streams in vertical that will also be discoverable and seeable in people's feeds, whereas lazy people that are just going to check a box and say, sure, put it in vertical in the shorts feed and let YouTube handle it, are going to have absolute garbage outcome. This is one of these pages where it actually makes some sense to have this left banner, which really I would typically want to get rid of, but this left banner is not that important, so it could be cropped off in the vertical stream and just show Megabonk and Hades, but it's not squeezing it in enough to show all of the rest of the page. This is another great reason why streaming at like 2K seems like it would make a lot more sense than streaming at 1080p, is just so you could get things to fit pixel with a 1:1 scaling pixel ratio. I think though I'm running dry on any other ideas. Though I think creatively wise, there's not much more I'm gonna really think of to make this really make sense. Yeah. That's a shame, but it's frankly not really surprising either. Yeah, these interstitial ones, I think I'd have a hard time changing these Google Slides PowerPoint ones anyways, but since I made these, I could just change them to fit pretty easily. Yeah, there's a weirdness about these slides having black on the sides. Everything I do, I try to have the same blue color that Steam has, just so there is a consistent visual aspect there. Yeah, everything here scales, so trying to zoom or unzoom the page, the slideshow here doesn't change anything. Trying to add margin doesn't change anything. And then these are not pages I typically show anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much. Most of these news stories are old because I'm streaming on Sunday, intentionally streaming on Sunday, so that we don't cover any new news. So I'm not going to really treat these news streams, these news articles like news and read the headlines and such. I am simply here playing with the margins. And then for Video Games Chronicles, it would be a lot of messing around to get it to format correctly. That's really the thing that's gonna show up here, I think. Is that, yeah, I cannot change this page again at all. It is dynamically scaling to the resolution of the window completely. So yeah. I guess the question to ask is, since I have two TVs that don't rotate to 90 degrees, does my computer monitor, that is my smaller monitor that I just watched streaming on, will that rotate to 90 degrees and be vertical? Or would I literally just have a TV where I'm looking at it and just twisting my head for hours on hours, which would definitely put a crick in my neck at best, break my neck at worst, to get to that vertical resolution. Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, I guess that means we don't really need to look at any more of Video Games Chronicle articles, since I can't change the appearance on any of them, and since I have it pretty consistent amongst all of these pages to look the same. So then the next thing to think about would be the Steam pages, which by far, since I look at every new game that comes out on Steam, what would that look like as far as a vertical stream. But before I do that, I'm thinking, well, we'll look at this one page and then I'll see what we can do. If we brought this down to about 30%, that's incredibly unreadable on Steam. If I squeezed it bigger to 150%, it would look like that, and that would be more readable. So we just continue to squeeze it down to 240%, I think, is where you get kind of mobile form. You can see it's somewhat readable in that form, but not really. Where were we as far as zoom goes? I think we were keeping it at 100%. Yeah. Then if we were to try to introduce margin at 100%, I mean, you could get to that point. That would mean not seeing any of the videos or screenshots if we did that. Or not really being able to see all of that. Yep. So yeah, again, it just doesn't feel like there's a real solution here. Alright, well, much like my regular live streams, I'm gonna have to take a bit of a bathroom break, so this will give me an excuse to see what vertical live stream looks like when Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel is playing. So yeah, that is also a thing to think about. And again, that's why just a more generic OBS way of handling this makes all the sense in the world, because the way I capture Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel is a game capture in OBS, whereas the way I'm capturing Firefox is a display capture. I would use a application capture, but Windows is a pain in the butt and will put a mandatory yellow bar around any window being captured by that format for security reasons, and you cannot disable that in any way. And yeah, a window being captured feels like there should be a warning, like a one-time warning when you first install OBS, but the fact that you can capture the entire display and you can capture games when they're in full screen mode without that same warning just shows the inconsistency overall that Windows has for its security, making it really feel more like a pretense of security than actual security. Right. Well, I'm going to take a short bathroom break and then I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. There definitely is a case here where the things that look better in vertical are probably Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, because it is designed in part to fit that vertical format a little bit more because it's a mobile game. But yeah, it still doesn't look great by any means. It is also crazy how there seems to be completely no connection as to which stream gets its next frame first. I see the vertical stream and the horizontal stream jumping back and forth as far as when changes trigger, and they definitely just are not really in line with each other. You would think that the vertical stream would have more processes going on, but maybe not, because maybe it is just ignoring in some hard-coded way a significant part of every single frame it's being sent, instead of the full screen, which really in this case you do have to call a full screen stream, which is processing every single pixel of the frame. Right, so as far as Steam games go, again, I would just have to manipulate a whole bunch of stuff to get to that to work. So yeah, again, if you accidentally typed in a tag or clicked a tag here, it seems like there's a bug where it says no tags entered when actually there is a tag entered, and whatever tags you add become like the #1 tag that gets shown at the top of this list, which is exactly also the #1 tag shown here. This is basically the exact same first three of this. They're connected. So then to remove something that's inappropriately added, you have to basically add it again until it says that free to play is here. So then you can click it and remove it, and then it won't really show that it's been removed until you close the window and come back and see that it says no tags entered yet, which it says that anyways. So not really a great system they've got in their code. That might be something to do with their recent update on the Steam website, which they basically changed a lot while working very hard to make it look like very little changed, which I imagine there's a lot of websites that can benefit through being just recreated from scratch using more modern techniques and concepts while bending over backwards to not visually change. Steam in particular is pretty iconic. You wouldn't really expect its design to change drastically. I do at some point expect that in the next 10 years or so they will eventually shift from being blue to just darker and darker shades of blue until it's full on black themed. And I think some of this light blue will probably slowly be shifted upwards to just being more white themed, because blue is not really synergetic as much as it should be with every single video game in general. And you can see how the white with black outlines text here really pops, where gray and blue fades into the background a little bit. So yeah, you do expect that that will change. There is actually a fairly overcomplicated color palette of just the font colors going on here, and the color palettes of the backgrounds and the foregrounds for the things that Steam itself creates and controls versus thumbnails that are obviously made by the game creators. And yeah, you're not going to take something bright and colorful like Seven Deadly Sins and Phasmophobia, which is dark and horror themed, and be able to perfectly match two drastically different looking games, visually speaking. So they're trying to do something in the middle, but I don't know if blue really is in the middle there. They definitely are also trying to have a darker theme, whereas most, well, at least a lot of the other websites that sell games, storefronts, are more light themed, which I think gamers tend to prefer dark mode, sitting in dark rooms playing video games, so the darker themes. I don't think any browser, though, particularly supports high dynamic range. That's an interesting thought as far as, could you possibly be presenting colors even better? Most games don't really support HDR in any of its different formats that are available. And yes, Windows says it can support HDR, but I don't have that enabled, and I don't think YouTube really has that enabled as far as uploading HDR colors. Computers' color profiles are better than what TV in TSC color profiles were, and used to be, but it's been probably a decade or two since that was really an accomplishment, and we all would want to move closer to high dynamic range HDR monitors, although I'm not sure my new monitor actually does support HDR. It is a older model. There isn't, I think, a particularly good new model that has 4 HDMI inputs. It was kind of a gimmicky concept, and it obviously wasn't really embraced for the extra price that it cost. Which, there's other ways you could do it. They would just have bezels. Of course, all this fancy new monitor and HDR may not help me much, as my eyesight is making it increasingly difficult to see even television streaming content on the TV 8 feet away. And it's not like it's a small TV or anything. It is at least a 32-inch TV, so I mean, that's medium sized. Yeah, I guess I'm just learning what many people have to learn much younger, that they have to wear glasses if they're farsighted. I keep saying farsighted, it might actually be nearsighted, but yeah, you may just have to wear glasses to even watch TV, which is not something I would want to have happened by any means. Here we have some other video game Chronicles images, and I think this image is particularly dark, but maybe that is just my old monitor. No, even on my other monitor, this image seems really dark. Yeah. Yeah. There's a Matthew McConaughey game. I think that went right over my head. That Exodus as a game had Matthew McConaughey in it. I did not even catch that part. Alright, well then that's going to bring us to the Gematsu articles. Again, imagine there isn't going to be too much I can do. I have like one more experiment I might try, and then I think I'm just going to pretty much ignore vertical live streams. Vertical live streams are going to potentially just be what they are, and I may straight up just put some text at the top of the screen that says watch the find the regular live stream for the full image, because yeah, I'm trying to really think about it. I question how many people are going to be able to use this feature well. Like, even if you were by default making a vertical live stream, I just feel like if you were just doing a face cam vertical live stream talking to the camera, which is probably what most shorts are, or dancing or singing in front of the camera, I still feel like there's going to be a left side, right side, left column, right column of just little animations, hearts, thumbs ups, things like that. Maybe the chat. That is a thought, I guess. I could put the chat on screen. It's a dangerous thought, certainly, because then anybody can type anything on the screen, and then that is just part of the live stream. But that would be potentially one of the three columns. In that case, I would heavily suggest you having someone secondarily right there filtering out the chat on 30-second delays. But even if you were filtering out the chat on a 30-second delay, that's not actually going to help too much, because boy, this plugin does not want to cooperate. Yeah, even if you're on a 30-second delay, unless you just dump your stream and there isn't a 7-second edit. Live to tape, or tape to live, really, would be the only way this would make any sense, is if you were recording something on tape visually, and then you were editing it and then putting it out and recording it live, but then actually editing it and then streaming it live at a different time, which recording it live means nothing. You record everything live, don't you? So yeah, pre-recorded would be the only thing that would really make sense there, if you were going to put the chat on the side of the stream. And I wouldn't be surprised if somebody thought of that and would put a fake chat up. For small content creators like me, having even one person in the chat is fairly uncommon, so yeah, that as a concept doesn't really make sense. Again, bringing it down to 30% still doesn't fully squeeze that into the page. With the Komatsu articles. So yeah, that doesn't work either. So yeah, if we would have left column something like chat, and then right column the rest of the page, that still wouldn't really make sense. It almost would make sense to do a central column. There would be a way to get rid of all pictures, and just have text in the central column. And there might be a way to hide all text and only show pictures in the central column. Yeah, with CSS you could potentially do that. Could you duplicate a page though and have the same page open at the same time, one without text and one with? Yeah, it's a little complicated, but yeah, there would be a way to do that. And I suppose in the same way there would be a way to just change every web page to be 3 columns. It's complicated. Even just the thought is complicated, which means the actual implementation of it would be very complicated. But yeah, you could theoretically in JavaScript take all of the HTML of a page, all of the body part of the page at least. Really don't need to duplicate the entirety of the HTML, and put it in like an iframe, I think is what you would want to do, and make 3 columns, and then add the body of the page 3 times. It wouldn't dynamically wrap around, so when like I was scrolling down, one part wouldn't scroll with the rest of it. Not easily. There might be a way to make that happen through like a JavaScript event. And I probably should just look for an extension to see if something like that would happen. Still, it's questionable whether you shouldn't just do that with OBS instead of with Firefox as a browser. But I like the concept more of, instead of just making it 3 columns showing the page really zoomed down, making it where you are showing the pictures and then the text and separating it out. That would be somewhat custom for each web store. But it could work. It really could work. And for a lot of times when I'm covering these articles, all I'm really doing is reading the headlines anyway, so if I was just reading the headlines out and the text here is not visible, and instead it is just this picture and this gallery collection, then it would just look like I have notes that I'm reading off of, when for widescreen people they would see that all of the text is actually over here. And maybe it would just make more sense to only put the pictures in a center column and then put the entire page on the right column, with the pictures smaller, shrunk down. Still don't know what the left column would be. Yeah, the left column is the one that I'm still not thinking of anything good to do with it. Yeah, I still don't feel like it's safe to really put chat there. By the way, YouTube will delete your channel potentially based on what someone else puts in the chat, which is incredibly unfair, certainly. Now, one thing about the vertical live stream option here is if I was putting out a 4K image, which would be a 2x2 grids of 1080p images, all in the horizontal form factor, there's no indication whatsoever that it would do anything different in that case and try and make the YouTube short be like a 1080p image, although it may very well be a 1080p image on the back end of YouTube. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if YouTube shorts in part are being designed in a way to save on storage by being limited to at most 3 minutes and possibly being limited to 1080p as far as how it gets processed and stored. I'm pretty sure you can upload above 1080p, but I'm not sure that they really adopt all of that on shorts. They definitely adopt all of that on other things. I suppose, if I think about it, it would be easier in the JavaScript to have the left side be the full page shrunk down, and then the middle column to be just the pictures, and maybe the right side to be just text, separating things out. So like everything, pictures, text, and then maybe figuring out some way where you could swap the two around, so pictures and text might swap places every now and then, although maybe that's not even that helpful. Yeah. It would be, I suppose, weird if you had a 4K image. Let's just say that this was a 4K image of a monitor, and then the vertical stream just took 1080p, or, well, a vertical 1080 by 1920 slice out of the center out of that, because that would just be like right there, roughly, of the image, where almost certainly it would instead just take something closer to that. And for most images, when you're doing the rule of thirds, you tend to have something fairly good in the center of an image to show. Web pages, though, are definitely designed not by the rule of thirds and will simply fill the screen with as much text as one can handle. Yeah. Let's keep going. I think I'm lucking out here because I do think, with the exception of new games on Steam, there weren't any new news stories to go on this stream. And so I've thought through this whole process, and this has helped me, but it has also been probably fairly boring, wasteful, thinking out loud content, easily skippable. I would love for comments from other content creators if they have any thoughts. This page in particular I would never show. This is just all the new games on Steam, with the exception of ignored and adult games that I have my macros automatically open, but some of these themselves, even the names and the thumbnails, might be not YouTube family friendly, so I don't need to really worry about that. Here we have a Gamatsu thing. It'd be really crazy if there was a dynamic way in which you could rotate images and videos, but people watching YouTube Shorts are probably not going to be happy with the idea of a video rotating just dynamically. Plus, while there might be individual frames of a video that are good looking, good enough to see vertically rotated, like this would be fine if this was rotated vertically. This would be even better. But when you start to get to more detailed stuff, this would look awful rotated 90 degrees. Yeah. So this is showing how many different Tales of games have existed in the series, which is a lot. 30th year anniversary from 1995 to 2021 was the most recent one. That is a lot, and I wouldn't have inherently assumed that things like Tales of Symphonia and Tales of the Abyss were even in the same series of games. I would have potentially been willing to believe that there were just several different developers making games called Tales of something, since that's almost certainly not copyrightable. And yeah, there probably are several games that have Tales of in the name that aren't part of this Tales of series from Bandai. And again, that might be a thing where in Japanese, Tales of translates to a very recognizable phrase or copyrightable phrase, where translating it to English turns it into a more generic phrase. Ninja Jaja Maru-kun 40th anniversary game announced. I do not recognize this. This, I think, is probably something that never came over to the West. And those are two stories that look like they actually are new. Let's look at Gaming on Linux. Again, don't really show these pages, so it doesn't matter. So, same question as far as zooming things in. Yes, I could bring this down to 30%. No, that doesn't look good. Weirdly, right now it's only at 60%. 100% is way over here and gets even bigger. Yes, I could try to add a margin and bump things around. Yeah. I stopped using this plugin in particular because it's kind of a hassle. Yeah, I don't think that really works particularly well. Yeah. I don't think any of these Gaming on Linux articles are anything new, so I won't treat them like actual news stories. GE Proton released with FEX included. FEX is the, I think, ARM compatibility layer, or what is it? Android compatibility layer? They're working on to have Android apps run. Yeah. It's kind of Valve's own take on Waydroid. Yeah. Let's keep on going forward. Some of this might be new information, but I don't think it really is. I'm yawning. Inherently, I'm still staying up way too late throughout the entire night. I think I went to sleep around 6 in the morning this morning. On my cheap $9 smartwatch, I turned on the alarm clock function just to play around with that, and all it does is make my watch vibrate for a few seconds, which, I mean, it's got to be about the most subtle. I didn't know I owned nuclear throne. Interesting. Yeah, that's way too subtle for an alarm clock. You don't even have to press the button to turn it off. Alright, that'll bring us to GameDeveloper.com. And again, this is a page I don't really show, so I don't really care about the sizing there. But let's click on this new story. See what we can do here. Again, you can bring it down to 30% and make it unreadable. And let's see if we could add anything. This is perhaps the most pliable page yet as far as a domain. So I could do something like that. But yeah, I don't think that's really how I'm going to do things. Alright, so let's just quickly go through all the games that came out on Steam. It's Vampire's Eternal Duet. I will keep an eye out on. Really shouldn't be too many games. I'm still in the process of adjusting things completely. I got a lot of non-English language games over the weekend. Definitely feels like my computer is deciding to really fire up its fans a lot more lately. I suppose that might be because of it being cold outside, me running the heater, or it may just be the fact that I'm not running the air conditioner. Shatterland. I feel like there was a TV show by that name or something, but it's not that game. I'm testing out a smart air conditioner vent, and it has a cool and heat mode, and I read the instructions to try and figure out what that does, and it's interesting. Instead of just having the fan on at a single speed, it will ramp up the fan speeds per degree, or every 2 degrees maybe, I think is what it might have said, to either speed up or slow down the fans. And when it's in heat or cool mode, it actually can sense when air is flowing through it and turn on or off the fans. So it doesn't actually spin the fans until your central AC unit starts blowing air through its blades. So I'd assume it just has a sensor as far as how much voltages or current, amps probably if I was to guess, through the fan blades, and when there's no air going through it, it would get no voltage from the fan blades, because motors turn into generators when the fan blades are spun, and there's no electricity going through them, so they probably sense when enough air causes the fan blades to spin. Of course, if your air conditioner doesn't have enough pressure to make the blades spin, these little computer fans spin, then you probably are not going to get any benefit out of it. But what that does create is a situation where it is auto balancing the different rooms in your house based on the desired temperature that you can set for each room and a thermostat temperature sensor that is in each room. It doesn't, however, allow you to completely shut off any room, which probably is a bad idea anyways. Like, I think the flare vents that are much more expensive would let you completely shut off a vent to a room. But it's not a terrible system, assuming it works and doesn't break, which these cheap Chinese devices do have a tendency to break and work sporadically, although the code here looks pretty good. And particularly in the United States, with the weird systems that are set up for AC units in the United States, there is not really great smart thermostat that would control a main air conditioner unit. I just found out that the Ring thermostats, not that I would, no, the Google Nest thermostats, not the Ring, those are doorbells. Apparently the latest generation supports being connected to boilers, which, yeah, 50-50 shot, I think, depending on where you live as far as the United States, whether you would have a boiler. I feel the Cult of the Yellow King is one of those SCP stories. I'll give it a chance anyways. But yeah, I only found that out because I was trying to figure out what my pre-2015 Nest thermostat, what generation it was, because they shut down support for that, and there's definitely people that are upset, and there's definitely the beginnings of a class action suit that is potentially going to happen. Here we have a Video Games Chronicle article in a completely different place. Director denies Star Wars the fate of the Old Republic could be more than 4 years away. Quote, I'm not getting any younger, which is a basic statement to say, certainly. Even when I run the macro and very little happens, it seems like these macros are wildly random in where it puts tabs. Yeah. I also was telling someone that their Google Nest thermostat, which connects to Google Home, everything in Google Home is shareable to the To Your Smart Life app, which you can get a lot cheaper devices and a lot more devices in that app, and I find it to be better to use and updated more often. But Google Home, everything from Google Home can be shared to the To Your Smart Life app, and everything from the To Your Smart Life app can be shared to some level with Google Home. Although a lot of times it's like Matter, where the app that the device is actually designed to be used in, it gives you a ton of features, and sharing it through something like Matter just gives you an on and off button that treats it like a light bulb more than anything else. 。 Yeah. Here we have a Video Games Chronicle article, which looks like it's new. Resident Evil Requiem's Leon brings adrenaline pumping action to complement Scaredy Cat Grace, says the director. Let's see. And then it says Leon and Grace's sections in Resident Evil 9 are almost equally split, is the subheadline. So yeah, we are getting a real bit of detail there as far as what that game is really going to be about. So half the time you're going to be playing as Leon, and half the time you're going to be playing as Grace. But I would heavily suspect that they may call her Scaredy Cat Grace at the beginning, but it would be fairly shocking to me if it turned out that by the end of Grace's campaign, she's not shooting guns and just as accomplished a fighter as Leon is. That's pretty much how it goes most of the time. I can see on the vertical stream here, which I've just been watching this whole time, that it's just showing Leon's ear. So, yeah. It's going to be a pretty terrible setup to begin with as far as the live streams go if you do vertical. Yet, still, even at terrible, it's better to have the live stream enabled, vertical streams enabled, than to not have them enabled. But it is definitely going to be something we'd have to revolutionize. I'd have to revolutionize. This is not the way I want to go through fall list cleanup in the future. Again, this page would have to either be shrunk down to 30% to really do anything useful there. Then it would be very unviewable. There is information certainly in seeing how consistent all of the pages that I look at are, and that the same problems are equally prominent in each of the pages for the most part. Little tweaks here and there depending on what website and what design there is, but it does help a little bit to know that everything boils down to it being a terrible one big problem instead of several different terrible problems for different websites. Yeah, I might as well talk about this game Tormentor. There is this developer, MadMind, which made this game Agony, and it looked like many years ago that Agony was going to really push the limit of just depravity, sexual content, violence, just really push it in the form factor of 3D CGI graphics and realism, and also being in the wrappings of a decent game. Before Agony, the next biggest game that you would think that went that way would have been probably Dante's Inferno, which would have probably been another decade before Agony came out. Well, it's been many years since Agony came out, and bait and switched its audience by being censored when it said it wasn't going to be censored, and then coming out with an Agony unrated game that then was still censored but a little less censored. They came out with a game called Succubus. There was apparently also a Kickstarter for this game Tormentor, and it seemingly was not originally allowed on Steam, and so was released on Good Old Games. I think that was the case. And so now it is finally on Steam, and people are not happy with the quality, and I think that's generally the case. That I don't think Succubus was really something that ever really was beyond early access level of quality. I don't think Tormentor is even as good as Succubus was, and Agony unrated is perhaps the only one that was even worth mentioning at the time, and it's probably not relevant now. In the meanwhile, there was also the Lust for Darkness series that went in that same direction, and it didn't really go too far. All of these series show these types of games were probably fairly streamer bait games, but then most streaming services like YouTube would not be very happy about it. I looked at some of the reviews of Tormentor, and it seems like the gameplay really boiled down to just seeing a bunch of cutscenes that play the same each time with minimal gameplay interaction. Now, my hope would be that Hellraiser comes out and really pushes the bar and the level of quality up really high. That being said, there's equally as good of a chance that Hellraiser has to censor itself or just gets banned completely from Steam. There literally is just more censorship happening now than even a few years ago. So yeah, I just don't think that we're going to see a bastion and revolution of free speech that is allowed to actually be free and include high levels of sexuality and violence and gore. I would like to see Hellraiser push the doors wide open for many game-to-play developers, but even if Hellraiser is let through, that doesn't inherently mean other developers are going to be let through, which we've seen that happen certainly too, with plenty of developers not being allowed, particularly Japanese developers who tend to have the anime art style, but also wild and crazy developers in the West, such as the maker of Horsers. Of course, there's a bigger story around Horses than I think is actually being reported on, probably because Horses itself is not that big of a story to be talking about in the first place. Although it really is the duty of every mainstream video game journalist and video game journalist in general to talk about and point out when there is censorship, because it's always going to be some small underdog game that you don't really want to be associated with, and you just have to be a free speech advocate and say, hey, maybe this is disgusting speech, maybe this is speech I don't like, but I don't really need to point that out or say it. I just need to report on the fact that this is happening and that censorship is happening, because if you don't put as maximum amount of pressure as you can against censorship early, it's just going to be a slippery slope and get worse and worse till you get to a point where you can no longer even speak out against censorship for fear of repercussions of some sort. Yeah. So yeah, particularly journalists should know that. Unfortunately, most video game journalists are not real journalists, haven't been trained in real journalism, and just have not enough knowledge or training to push back against censorship. Even regular journalists, not video game journalists, are pretty bad about pushing back against censorship. Okay. Let's see. Weirdly, there's another Video Game Chronicle article here which is just talking about the French being proud and the France's president congratulating Claire Obscure for winning so many awards. Emmanuel Macron, still the president of France. Feels like he's been the president of France for a while, actually. Alright, well, this has been another informative and helpful test live stream to do. It's got me thinking in a lot of different ways. I think there's one more experiment I might do of just seeing if I could rotate a monitor and see if that helps any. But honestly, I don't know how much that would really help. It would be amazing if it just fixed everything. But yeah, I don't know how you pull that off. At a certain point, if turning the monitor fixed everything, then I probably should just live stream in vertical format. Which that is a question, certainly, as far as could I just live stream in vertical format? Because then that would just make more sense overall to have only one format, and it is a vertical format. Although websites clearly are not really designed for vertical formatting. Like text is weirdly, well, books are vertical, but websites are no. Yeah, that is weird, isn't it? Yeah, books are effectively portrait format. So why are websites made like paintings? I guess maybe they just thought websites were going to be more pictorial, more landscape in their format. But yeah, when HTML was first designed, there was very little bandwidth for pictures. By all means, the screens and the monitors should have been in portrait, but they weren't. The computer monitors, before even the internet was popularized for PCs, were more like TVs, which were more at a 4:3 ratio originally, and then eventually 16:9 widescreen, which follows film. So film clearly heavily influencing computer monitors more than websites are. Yeah, I guess that's an interesting thought as I was wrapping up here. Anyways, that's going to be it for this stream. I don't think I'll stream anything new for the rest of this evening, but maybe I'll take a break and see what I'm going to do. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment,